6 to 11. Listen to part of a lecture on environmental science. The professor is discussing introduced species. I guess it's time. Let's get started. We're going to talk a bit about introduced species. You know, this is actually an important issue in many areas of the world. Can anyone tell me what an introduced species is?
Is it a species that has been released into an area by humans?
Sometimes, but not necessarily. The term introduced species is simply used to refer to any non-native species that enters an ecosystem. Okay, they can be brought in by people and by the forces of nature, like the wind. Introduced species are also known as exotic species, naturalized species, or, if they've become pests, they're called invasive species. Today, we are going to examine the impact that an introduced plant species has had on an ecosystem. Actually, it's very common for people in the United States to import plants from other continents. This is because the local plants are often not considered decorative enough. So plants from other regions are brought in, and sometimes they have problems adjusting. They may require more water than is available, for example. However, they often prosper too well, resulting in a negative effect on native species. One such plant is the Russian olive, which was introduced to central and western United States in the 19th century as an ornamental. Let me describe this plant to you. It's a perennial shrub, meaning it has a life cycle of 2 or more years. It's a very attractive plant with thick, silvery foliage. And people like the plant because it's dense, so it's ideal for use as a hedge. The plant was well suited to the climate, and it thrived and soon became a common addition to many people's lawns. As with all exotic species, as long as the Russian olive was confined to areas of human habitation, it posed no threat to the surrounding ecosystem. The problem is, the fruit of this tree proved, popular with many birds, resulting in its seeds being deposited into the wild. This proved to be a disaster because this plant is able to outcompete the native species. It consumes a high proportion of the available groundwater, which leaves little of this resource for other plants. In addition, the dense shade produced by the Russian olive's foliage makes it almost impossible for the saplings of other trees to mature. As the Russian olive is able to grow in almost any type of soil, it spreads rapidly. In fact, the only natural restriction on its potential habitat is a need for a lot of sunshine, which has led to its invading the southwestern portion of the country. So, although introduced plants are often visually appealing, they usually negatively impact the ecosystem. That is why many environmental groups are now trying to discourage this practice by promoting native species as symbols of their respective regions. Whether this will succeed remains to be seen. Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. 6. What is the main topic of this lecture? Seven. Why does the professor mention the wind? Eight. What can be inferred about introduced plants? 9. According to the professor, what is one negative effect of the dense shade produced by the Russian olive? Ten. According to the professor, what is a reason the Russian olive grows well in the southwestern United States?
Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
So, although introduced plants are often visually appealing, they usually negatively impact the ecosystem. That is why many environmental groups are now trying to discourage this practice by promoting native species as symbols of their respective regions. Whether this will succeed remains to be seen. 11. What can be inferred about the professor?
(12 to 17). Listen to part of a lecture in a music class.
It seems like all forms of modern music include sounds that are produced electronically. However, it's important to note that electronic music is also a distinct art form, and one of the most popular genres of this type of music is electronica. So, what is electronica? Well, this term started being used in the 1990s to refer to the various styles of electronic music that were becoming popular, such as techno music and house music. Do you have a question?
I just wanted to clarify something. Are you saying that electronica is dance music?
That's part of it. But electronica also includes music that is, well, that's not really suitable for dancing. For example, one subgenre is ambient music. This is electronic music that is intended to, to function almost as background music. It doesn't have catchy rhythms or melodies. Anyway, in the late 1980s and early 90s, electronica was an underground art form. It was rarely played on the radio or in major performance venues. Some critics even claimed that it wasn't really music.
That seems like kind of an extreme position. Why did they feel that way?
That's a good question. The main issue was that electronica breaks many of the rules regarding song structure. Basic elements, such as verses and choruses, are missing, for example. In addition, it isn't created by musicians who play conventional instruments. And, of course, electronica often involves sampling. Small sections of other songs are included in a piece. These critics found electronica confusing, and so they didn't know how to react to it. It didn't match their expectations about how music should sound. But this is actually what appealed to the early fans of the genre. Electronica was an entirely new form of music. It was all about creating unique sounds and audio effects. And these were combined in unusual ways to arouse emotional and even physical responses in listeners. To do this, artists took full advantage of new music technologies. One of the most important was the synthesizer. Is everyone familiar with this instrument?
It's sort of like an electronic piano, right?
Well, they're similar in appearance. Both have keyboards. But a synthesizer produces a much wider range of sounds. It can convincingly imitate other instruments or create totally new sounds. This is why it was so vital to early electronica artists. Another important technological development involved the editing of sounds. There were computer programs that allowed musicians to manipulate recorded sounds. This enabled them to create very distinctive music. Now, by the late 90s, electronica had entered the mainstream, and it had a significant impact on other forms of music. Major pop stars began incorporating electronica into their songs, and, after a while, other musical combinations started appearing, and they were somewhat surprising. I mean, even punk music showed signs of being influenced by electronica. In fact, electronica became so popular that it was even used in commercials, a practice that continues today.
That's true. It seems like every time I see a car commercial on TV, there's some sort of upbeat electronic music playing in the background.
Right, and it makes sense when you think about it. On the one hand, electronica is associated with youth and energy. On the other, there's nothing controversial about it. No chance of inappropriate lyrics or anything in a commercial. Why wouldn't an advertiser use it?
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer.
12. What is the main topic of the lecture? "13. Why does the professor mention ambient music? "14. Why did some critics claim that electronica was not real music?
"15. What does the professor imply about early fans of electronica? "16. Why was the synthesizer important to the development of electronic music?
Listen again to part of the lecture. Then answer the question.
On the one hand, electronica is associated with youth and energy. On the other, there's nothing controversial about it. No chance of inappropriate lyrics or anything in a commercial. Why wouldn't an advertiser use it?
17. What does the professor mean when he says this?
Why wouldn't an advertiser use it?